Now we're live.
All right. Week 1 is in the books. No Achilles is safe, but we're here to take you through all of the stats, all of the charts. This is Stat Chasing.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase. Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally this boys. You're right.
Welcome to Stat Chasing Week 1. I am happy to join my host Drico here as we go through some of the stats and the charts that we've put together from all of the Week 1 games. Pretty wild week of NFL. For those of you not familiar with me and my work, I am sacrilegious. I do content over at Spike Week, where we focus on pretty purely best ball related content and strategy and tools. I'm pretty frequently in the Discord channel, hanging out in the Deposit Kingdom channels and the Ship Chasing channel. And you may have seen me as a finalist in the Best Ball Data Bowl this year. But very happy to be joining Drico this season for Stat Chasing and looking forward guiding you guys through some charts.
Yeah, really excited to have you, Sack. Was really hoping that you would accept this. So pumped that you did, and really excited to get into these charts with you.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, I mean, I know that every season it feels like week 1 is so chaotic and there's so much crazy stuff that happens that we never could have predicted. But it's just par for the course, man. That's what the game is that we sign up to play. Like, it's just all chaos, and there's only so much we can do, spending months in the off season talking about it and projecting things. But the rubber's meeting the road now, so it's time to get down to business.
Yeah, with that pretty good transition. So we are going to start off with our QB passing efficiency and rushing production chart. And so this chart shows two things. It shows adjusted yards per attempt, which is essentially a passing efficiency per attempt metric. It bakes in, it rewards touchdowns and punishes interceptions. So it's really a kind of a pure, how good were you at throwing the ball per attempt? And then on the other hand, we also have a touchdown rate. Obviously, that is a good, high touchdown rates are signs of good productive offenses. But they can also be a tell on who has had a sort of unsustainably high touchdown rate. If you see a guy with low yards per attempt and then high touchdown rate, it's kind of sort of a tell of a possibly an outlier. And really the reason I should also mention the size of the bubble also corresponds to rushing yards, and bigger the bubble, more rushing yards per game. And really what we're trying to sort of gauge which quarterbacks have played well, which quarterbacks are playing well, and try and use that as a kind of gauge for future performance going forward. And with that, Zach, is there anybody here who stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson had a really unproductive first game. I think, and obviously, since we're only dealing with 1 week of sample, like a lot of this is really noisy. But one thing that I think is super important is with the quantitative side of the data, we also want to be able to apply the qualitative side too. And it's not that one type of data is inherently more valuable than the other, but it's just different flavors, and being able to mesh the two together is how you get the best actionable takeaways. And so, for example, like when I see Jordan Love up there with above a 10% TD rate and insane adjusted yards per attempt, there's a couple things that I'm thinking. Number one, like, okay, Jordan Love had a pretty good week 1. Now it might be the Bears defense was pretty bad. He might've just been running hot. But there's at least enough signal there where I'm like, Jordan Love probably is going to be at the very least a functional NFL quarterback this season.
Right. And sorry, one of the things that reminds me of is that like the more extreme the outlier, it's like the more likely it's at least directionally accurate. Like
100%. Yeah, agree with that very much. Because even if you say that, oh, well, he was so far above what his base TD rate is going to be on the season, like, okay, well, think of this as, every data point we get is going to fall in the range of outcomes for these guys for each game. And so this just means that this is in the range for Jordan Love. And so for that to be in the range, he either has a really long right tail where this was like a major outlier for him, or maybe this isn't so terribly far away from his mean. And I think he's probably, at least a full standard deviation away from what his mean outcome is going to be. But I still like Jordan Love, as a competent NFL quarterback on the season.
Yeah. And the way I'm sort of feeling about it is that like, if the market and there's various markets, there's like waiver markets, there's DraftKings, there's
Best Ball Resurrection coming up.
Yeah. And if the market doesn't buy that and I'm seeing it, then like that's a pretty good sign that, listen, it costs you nothing to take a swing at this, and your upside could be pretty good here. And something to watch out for, like if we're in week 3 and he's in that range, like that's getting pretty bullish.
Yeah, it's kind of the NBA jams, heating up on fire kind of mentality. If Jordan Love is doing this week after week, all of a sudden we gotta pay attention. And kind of the flip side of this is market overreaction to the downside. So for example, someone like Justin Fields, where we see the size of that data point, this is not a surprise to anyone. We knew Justin Fields was going to run. And he didn't have a great passing performance week 1, but the Packers have a good pass defense. And so if people are overreacting on Justin Fields in the market and, oh my gosh, we knew he was not going to pass enough to sustain DJ Moore, and you don't really want parts of that offense, I'm willing to take shots on Fields because he absolutely has that ceiling. You look at how much he rushed in that first game, the only person with, a dot similar size like Anthony Richardson for him and Deshaun Watson. But Fields still is dwarfing both of them. So
yeah, I completely agree. And one other thing that sort of stands out to me, and it's not I guess it's not too big a surprise since the fantasy performance he produced. Stafford there at around 9 yards adjusted yards per attempt, with a 0% touchdown rate. That does seem like the type of game where, if Stafford still has it, he could be one of those pocket passers that is so efficient that he creates enough points for himself to at cost to really compete with the kind of more hybrid guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stafford's the kind of quarterback where I'm going to be very price sensitive on him. Just like guys, if you think back to best ball ADP this summer, just like guys like Jared Goff and Geno Smith and that kind of range, that end of the QB window, like I don't think it's unfair to say Stafford probably belongs in that range, but we saw this in his Super Bowl winning season, even when he was doing really well for fantasy. It was a mixed bag. There were about half his games where you were really happy to have him, and about half the games, and that's just the nature of pocket passers of that.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And then one other thing that I'm sort of like still trying to react to a little bit, was Sam Howell. I thought going into week 1 that going against like a kind of like not very strong Cardinals defense, that he might look even better than I was imagining him to be. And then he actually comes in sort of average. Is that alarming to you at all?
Yeah, it was a little concerning to me. I definitely want more sample. Again, it's a brand new offense for him, right? And it's not like he got playing time or reps last season. So I'm leaving a light on for Sam Howell, absolutely. But this it wasn't encouraging, And I also, again, only 1 week of data, hard to draw, too many huge conclusions. I kind of think the Cardinals defense, I think they're bad, but I don't think they are going to be as bad as the market thinks that they are. I didn't watch the entire game, but from the little bit that I watched and from a little bit that I saw in preseason, I think we might have oversold how bad the Cardinals are. I think they're bad, but I don't think they're going to be like the absolute stone worst defense in the league.
There's still some NFL talent on their defense, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Seems very reasonable. And so maybe a little bit of concern on Howell, but maybe we need a couple more games to really want to adjust aggressively.
The other guy I'm leaving a light on for is Kenny Pickett. Not a great first game. I think he was in the 42 pass attempts or something ridiculous, and couldn't crack 300 yards. He was in the mid 200s, 260 or something. So that wasn't ideal to see, but it was against a great defense. And then on the flip side of that game, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to hold so many Brock Purdy L's this season. It's going to be pretty painful for me. I did not pack enough Purdy. The offense is just really good. And we'll see if that trend continues or if at some point he turns back into a pumpkin, but I'm ready to take the L on that one right now. He's probably going to be a pretty solid, fringe, bottom end QB1, definitely squarely in the QB2 conversation week after week. And he'll have those upside games when he captures a lot of the touchdowns, when it's just all passing touchdowns instead of rushing touchdowns. You're going to be happy to play him that week or happy he's on your team.
I agree with that on Purdy. I think I might be a little bit more concerned about Pickett than you, and some of that. So obviously we've only got the week 1 sample size, but if I'm also looking for extra data points, I go back to last year. He didn't play very well last year, overall, and then as a college player, other than his senior year, he was pretty brutal, and so he has the first round draft capital, and he did have that amazing senior year, but I think with enough kind of alternative data points. I'm completely ready to be wrong on this. I'm definitely pretty concerned about Pickett after pretty brutal first game.
Yeah, one of the last one that I really wanted to bring up is if you look at Desmond Ridder, he doesn't look that bad on this chart, but
right.
my goodness, the amount of pass attempts that team had. If that trend holds, if that team only passes 18 times a game or even 23 times a game or 25, oh my gosh, it's going to be not good. So that's unfortunate as a man with a lot of Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, he felt like a good what you call it, a good kind of upside case, given that he's pretty fast, he's a good athlete, you've got good weapons there. But yeah, very, very concerning.
Yeah, I think we need an Arthur Smith head injury to unlock Desmond Ridder.
One thing that I am seeing, and maybe to leave some kind of candle on, they did have 18 plays where they're ahead by more than a touchdown. They didn't have a single play where they're trailing. And I know there was definitely plays or games last year where they were in trailing game scripts, and it just didn't matter. It didn't matter, but maybe it's not quite as bad. Maybe that's something where it is bad. It's definitely bad, but maybe it's not as bad as week 1 was.
Yeah. we'll need more data points to know for sure, but their schedule's pretty soft. Like I could absolutely see them getting leads in a lot of games this year
Right.
and just never putting their foot on the gas. So that's concerning.
18 pass attempts in week 1, and so I'm sort of like trying to figure this out a little bit on the fly as well. And it's like even if what I said before was correct, and let's say that they get in more neutral scripts, you're looking at like 25 attempts a game, which it's not really enough.
Yeah.
When you look at when you look at the Have offenses that are throwing plus 40, that's not really enough.
And if week 1 is to be believed, I mean, what was it, like 50% or something target? It might have been even higher. Was it 50% or 75%? I can't remember. Target share to the running backs. Like, oh my God, we're never gonna throw the ball downfield. Like
Right.
Kyle Pitts and Drake London just get none and like it. Like, oh
Right.
man.
Yeah,
that's all the moaning I'll do about Desmond Ridder though.
So, the only other thing that I thought might be worth bringing up is Bryce Young. So he they definitely they threw it quite a bit, but not only a small bit of rushing yardage there, and really quite poor efficiency. So that's one where I was before the season. I drafted a decent amount of Bryce Young just because I was like, oh well, he's an early drafted rookie, and the market is so confident that he's bad. Like it feels like something to take a stab on the other way. That's one where I'm like, like that. You need more than a week for it's more than a week 1 rookie sample size to decide that he's bad. But it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I definitely am more optimistic about Stroud. Not that he didn't look so great or anything, but they did allow him to throw. He had 44 attempts or something like that. And so I'm definitely maybe this Houston staff is willing. Hey, just let's get your reps. We're gonna need reps. We got some growing pains to get through. That's a spot, and also like Nico Collins finally did what we've been hoping Nico Collins would do for his entire NFL career. So, and Robert Woods was involved. Like that's looking like it might shape up to be a very fine last round best ball pick. But yeah,
like one of those offenses that's like not actually good, but functional enough to create these kind of late round winners.
100%. Oh, and sorry, the million last things. But the Mac Jones, that offense. I mean, the thesis wasn't that hard to get behind. Like, hey, you had the stone worst offensive coordinator that's been in the league in the last 2 decades calling plays last year, and it can't be worse. It literally can't be worse. And Mac Jones threw for 3,800 yards as a rookie. And it's not like when he was a rookie, he had all these weapons. It was like, well, that's why he threw for 3,800 yards. It's the same cast of characters, basically, like it's still Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry. And so I think the market went way too far the other way on Mac Jones. I think that's going to be, he doesn't even have to be good. He doesn't have to be good to crush his price. What if he's better than Stroud and Dobbs and Young and Tannehill? And I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be putting up stinkers quite as bad as this past week. But like, what if Mac Jones is better than Daniel Jones? Couldn't that be in the range of outcomes? And like we were taking Mac Jones in the 18th round and Daniel Jones in the 10th round. Like, makes you think.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think with how efficiently priced quarterbacks have been, you get an outperformance even later. It can be really helpful. So that's Oh, here we go. So now we've got the RB snaps and usage chart, and this.
Gotta zoom out just a tiny bit on this one.
Oh, I do. Exit. Cancel.
While you work on getting that zoomed, some of the stuff that I saw at first when I put this together was, oh my goodness, James Conner might have some of the best usage for where he was priced in the market, and I still don't care. I couldn't care any less. The other one that I saw right away that I looked at was, dear God, Najee Harris. What were we doing? Anyone who has drafted Najee Harris out there, you want to tell me what we were doing, with Najee in the 4th round? Like, I'm pretty sure the actual, if we had a time machine and we could port ourselves to week 1 and see this outcome, even just this single data point, like, isn't the efficient price for Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, like both of them in the 10th or 11th round, like both of them right next to each other in a,
and so just to emphasize that point. So I think Najee Harris is probably a good one to kind of explain what this chart is. So this chart is essentially their rush attempts, their routes, and different blocking snaps as a percentage of the total offense. So if you add up and you see where's Najee, you can see that what we're saying here is Najee was only on the field for the Steelers offense 50% of the time. And then a large amount of that time was actually route running, which definitely nice. A small percentage is rush attempts, but this is a 50%, as you can see in the kind of hierarchy of starters here. It's pretty low down the totem pole, and not encouraging for Najee drafters at all. I don't think it definitely this does go a decent amount towards I guess the bear thesis for Najee. And so, Zach, one thing that this does make me think, especially with the high route share, do you think that his overall kind of like market share on snaps was low because the Steelers were getting spanked raw?
Yeah, absolutely. They passed, what was it, 75% of their plays were pass plays. Right. And so that's definitely a function. That's why you see so many routes for Najee Harris. And the other thing is the routes are encouraging to see for players that can earn targets. And he's not that dude. The last time Najee got targeted was when Big Ben's noodle arm couldn't get the ball more than 5 yards down the field, and it had to be Najee or it had to be Deontay, and those are the only options in the passing game. And so I don't really think, if we look at Najee Harris's routes that he's running versus, say, Dalvin Cook didn't look great either, but even like the Dalvin Cook routes, at least he got some targets, Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier got some targets.
Right.
Yeah, the empty calorie routes.
Empty calorie routes. He had 3 expected receiving points, which is that's pretty bad. He had 24 routes in all, and was only able to sort of convert that into 3 expected receiving points. Even in trail, it used to be, like you said, in the kind of peak Najee year, it used to be that even in trailing scripts, he was just this workhorse. So he was going to be running routes, he's going to be targeted. So really, your only path to scoring points with Najee, as it stands, what we're looking at here is that the Steelers are really good, and that they're getting Najee to the goal line, and he's falling into touchdowns.
Yep.
It doesn't
Yeah.
feel great.
Very, very well put. Couldn't agree more. Other concerning points on this chart. I saw Derek mention Derrick Henry in the chat. This one is not as concerning to me. I know it looks bad here, but Tajay Spears was on the field to do the stuff where it didn't matter. They needed a warm body at the running back position. And now Tajay was involved in the passing game. He was running routes and doing things like that. But I don't necessarily think it's terribly bullish for Derrick Henry. It's just they're trying to be smart with how they're using him. When it could literally be anybody that they've got a job that they need done on a play, and it can literally just be a warm body, they're gonna keep Henry off the field. And then when it's when they want to call his number, he's gonna be in there. So his snap percentage definitely is concerning. I don't think it's bullish for Henry, but it's not as concerning as it looks. The one that's actually concerning to me, and this is for a couple factors that don't show up on the chart, is Dameon Pierce. So we'll probably talk a little bit about this backfield later, but Mike Boone got like all the 2-minute work. And so that was concerning, where Dameon Pierce is going to be losing out on some of those high value touches there. And it's not like we expected him to be terribly involved in the pass game either, but their offensive line is just decimated. Thorman's line rankings show that, what are they missing? Like 3 starters right now. And they're just rolling out, future bag boys at Safeway right now on the line. And so I'm not bullish on the rush efficiency of that offense. He's getting less work than we anticipated. And it could have just been because they were getting beat bad by the Ravens, but the game was close for a little while. And Singletary got a little bit and Boone got a little bit. To me, it's not super exciting for Dameon Pierce.
Dead zone running back.
Yeah, that's the hallmark. You know who else looked like a dead zone running back? Oh my goodness, Alexander Madison slappies. Where are you at? Raise your hand if you're drafting Alexander Madison, in the 50s and 60s, because you're all the biggest slappies if you're just doing the Madison thing there. That was like the clearest. Hammer it all the way until like pick 80 when he shoots up and Dalvin gets cut, and then don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, because it's just, you're paying for projectable volume for a guy that's never been good. He is always, even in the games where he got like 30 opportunities, he wasn't good. He just got force-fed carries. And yeah, man, not super excited about Alexander Madison after what I saw. I mean, the usage is great, but if
he played terrible. He played terrible.
If you play like that by week 10, if Alexander Madison doesn't start turning in performances that are better than he showed in week 1, good luck keeping that usage. Right. That's other dudes are coming for that work. So
it probably helps him slightly. And I think on the record pretty strongly as being pretty anti-Madison. It probably does help him a little bit that they paid him like solid-ish money. But they're not paying him anywhere near enough to for him to get away with. So he had minus 5 points over expected, so 5 points under expected, which means he played pretty ass. And as our friend Clay said, it's just, especially when you get into into the later weeks of the season, that's just, it's not a helpful profile, and so that's probably a more helpful nugget for, let's say, resurrection and DFS and battle royale
for redraft too. Like for anyone out in the redraft streets, like if you can move Madison, I mean, it's not like you got a great performance in week 1 to go sell high on, but like if you can tell the volume story to your league mates that really love the projectable volume for running backs, like you can get out from under Alexander Madison here.
So you might feel like you're selling low, but maybe you're selling high. You're selling while he has the role, and maybe he keeps the role. But if it doesn't help you,
I would anticipate he keeps this role for longer. We're all going to be frustrated with how long Madison has this role this season, right?
Yeah, agree.
So if you're really trying to play it optimally, maybe you wait for a big week and you get off him. But I am not excited for Madison going forward. One of the other guys on this chart who might appear to be really attractive, where this is just noise to me, is Deion Jackson. Deion Jackson looked bad. He had 2 fumbles. He really only got all these snaps because Evan Hull, the most talented back on the roster currently, other than JT, got injured. And you got Zach Moss with a broken arm, and so it was like, all right, Deion, we're just gonna, I guess you're the guy. So
is he? I guess you're the guy. Yeah, going for the next 2 weeks or so until.
I think that Moss may be able to be back next week. Not that that's terribly exciting either. For me, that backfield is just a stay away. For right now. Because number one,
we don't think we don't think he's getting this usage, or he's like a strong case for this usage going forward, and not a strong player.
Yeah, even if he does get this, pretend he gets this usage one more week, I don't care. Give me someone with way less usage that could actually do something with it. So yeah.
So excited. I know this is a ship chasing brother pod stat chasing, but we can't spend the whole time shitting on running backs. Speaking, so talking about more positive running backs. So Travis Etienne being top of the chart for RB usage, and given how good we know he is, let's say, so he was going. I know he was going like, let's say 3-4 turn, maybe 4th round, in normal regular best ball season, and how what do you think is like an efficient ADP going into Resurrection now?
Yep, squarely the beginning of the 3rd, like 2-3 turn, right before that tier. So if you go back to where we were drafting this summer, there's that big precipitous teardrop, right at the end of the 2-3 turn, whereas like T. Higgins is the last stop on the wide receiver train, and then you're staring down like DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel type of guys. And I think that ETN goes ahead of all of that type of wide receiver. Now the names may change a little bit, like Calvin Ridley now is going to be pretty squarely in the 2nd round for receivers.
Yeah,
he was creeping up. But I think that he's, ETN's probably pretty squarely that 2-3 turn.
He's the first back after the wide receiver cutoff.
Yeah, I think so. And my thesis on ETN this offseason was, you heard everyone talk about how he was a 0 in the passing game. He wasn't good. You're really, that if you're hoping for passing game work from ETN, you're just wish casting. He wasn't even good at it in college. It just was, he was the best player on the field. But we're ignoring one important thing. These are professional athletes. They are the best in the world at their craft. And believe it or not, with the best coaching around them that they've ever had in their whole life, they can actually improve sometimes at things that they might not have previously been great at. And so he doesn't need to be, an Alvin Kamara level talent in the receiving game. He just needs to be someone that they can use in the receiving game. And I certainly think he's better than Tank Bigsby in the receiving game. The concerning note for him was Tank Bigsby did get those green zone touches over him. He got the one at like the 5 or 6 and pushed it all the way down to the 1 with that big pile. And then he got the carry to plunge into the end zone right after that. And ETN wasn't good at the goal line last season, right? Those short yardage things, that was a place where he struggled. So
right.
It's not all sunshine and roses for ETN, but overall I'm trending bullish on ETN. And I like guys that can deliver explosive plays like that. And if he does actually take a step forward in his involvement in the passing game, that's a great sign for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I'm sort of like, I'm actually thinking that he should, I tend to really overreact. And maybe so fade my overreaction and stay closer to Zach's more modest or moderate in stride reaction. I sort of think that if that usage continues, I think he's like literally a first round value. Like you talk about sort of like 10 double doubles, so like 10 expected rushing points, or sorry, 10 expected points from rushing and then 10 expected points from passing. He was like 8.5 and 8 for yesterday, and then he had almost 5 points over expected. So that seems to me like a really like if and I sort of believe what happened yesterday. Maybe I'm biased, but if I believe that, I'm like, that's a pretty strong like case for 20 to 25 points a game, which to me, maybe that doesn't count as first round anymore. But to me, that feels like total smash running back, and it would be really hard for me to not just click him every time in a second.
Okay, maybe I didn't come up high enough, because when I think about it in my head, I'm like, yes, I'm taking Travis Etienne over Saquon Barkley, but I was moving Barkley down, but maybe I just didn't move Etienne up enough. I think first round.
Where would you put him versus Pollard, for example?
I would still take Pollard over Etienne. We didn't get to see a ton of Pollard just because of the absolute dog walking the Cowboys gave the Giants. But Pollard is that's like the ceiling outcome for Etienne, right? Like I feel like number one, the offensive line is better. He's going to have more yards just blocked for him, Pollard is, than Etienne. They both can deliver those explosive rushing plays, but Pollard, we know, is a big plus in the passing game. Like he's a good pass catching back. And so Etienne, we're hoping that he's now like not a minus in the passing game, that he's able to contribute. I think it's a lot to say like, oh, all of a sudden he went from being really bad in the passing game to being incredible, like Tony Pollard is. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to think if there's someone that would be between Pollard and Etienne, right? Or if it's just Pollard then Etienne, because he's better than Barkley. Where do you put Chubb relative to those two?
Chubb is a hard one for me. I've always found it really hard to take Chubb, I find it pretty strange, or not strange at all. I find it sort of like confirmation for me that after all the hype, all the steam and such, that Chubb was now going to have this third down role, that he was what you call it, that he was now like pure enter bell cow territory, and he still seems fairly close to what he was before, so I feel like he's like probably like a fine second round 2-3 turn back.
So you'd put him squarely behind Etienne and Pollard, though. That sounds like a tier break for you almost.
Yeah, I would. And that's one where I probably don't play it like that in week-to-week games, just because I know what Chubb can do. But in season long, it does feel like the sort of path for Etienne and Pollard to deliver the just smash performance. It does seem a little clearer to me.
Yeah. So I last night, after I changed my pants after the first Breece Hall run, I made a slight overreaction RB tier list, and it was Breece tier break, CMC tier break, then Eckler, Bijan, Etienne, Pollard tier break. And that was kind of the way that I had it sorted.
Sounds like we're pretty close. Yeah. Sounds like we're so. Is there anybody else? I mean, Kenneth Walker, obviously strong usage there. We'd love to see that. Bijan, decent usage. Is there anybody else on this chart that you want
Oh, I mean, we can't bury Kyron news because Kyron is the back there. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Sean
yeah, great call.
McVay hates Cam Akers and has been pretty vocal about that he doesn't like Cam Akers. And we had the drumbeat from Kyron all the way through last offseason. We're getting the
Yeah,
Kyron drumbeat. And the team told us exactly how they feel about their backs, and then they went out and showed us what they want to do with them. So I would just say now Kyron he's a sub athlete. He's not,
right.
it's not going to be anything terribly exciting. But if he gets
He's
the
a coach's
usage,
son.
yeah, he's a coach's son, and he's like a low end RB2 for me, where it's like, I mean, at his where he was going, like, oh my God, what an absolute gem.
Yeah.
If you drafted Kyron, like, congratulations, that's looking really good. But
And so is it I guess the question is, so obviously we love what we see. Great outcome for the late round drafters. The two questions I would have is Kyron someone where you when you're bidding on waivers that you just like, you know what, I don't care if I have to pay 60-70%, I'm just gonna do it. And then other similarly, let's say I know he's cheap, he's going to be super cheap on DraftKings next week, and let's say he's projecting for like 60% ownership. Like those are two different questions. I know. I like what are you doing on bids, and are you jamming them at high ownership? Because I know you're an avid and good DFS player.
On waivers for Kyron, it depends largely on my team, right? If I'm in need of a running back, that's a guy where I'm like, hey, this is not a zero this week. This is a guy where I can plug this in and have some points. It might not be so terribly sexy, but I've got a redraft league with some buddies where I just lost J.K. Dobbins. I'm sitting on DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. And my only good running back is Breece Hall. I've got a Sean Tucker stash in there, but like on a team like that, yeah, I'm going to pay up for Kyron. I'm probably not getting to 60-70%. I want to save that. Like, hypothetically, I would never wish this, but hypothetically, say Austin Eckler misses extended time. Mm-hmm. I'm going 60-70% on Josh Kelly, right?
Right.
That's the kind of play where I'm going to put the chips in the middle. Kyron is more like if you need him, you might go to 30-35%. And waiver, I mean, like,
makes total sense to me. And I was kind of pushing you a little bit there because this chart is so bullish that I know that somebody will be like, oh wow, like I just jam them, and then maybe you want to take a step back from there just with the athleticism, and then if that's where you're at, it sounds like you're not playing them at 60%.
I'd have to look at the whole slate for DFS. It really depends on everything and how it balances out together. But if he's like a legitimate free, if he's Stone Min and he's free square, I can't remember who do the Rams play next week?
I don't know either.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I'm probably not super excited to play him at 60% in tournaments, but he definitely could be like a cash game play, just with strong usage for that price.
Yeah, it was more like what I was trying to get at was like, do you think it's something where he can deliver you the smash performance and you're not really worried about the downside? And it sounds like there is maybe some concern there that this is week one, and we could definitely still get sort of like a down to earth game. Where Cam Akers comes up in usage or he just plays bad.
Yeah, I definitely see the downside for Kyron. But I think for the most part, like, that's a quality waiver pickup, and obviously totally paid off it. He paid off his draft costs already. He gave you one game.
For sure.
For there you
go. I don't Yeah, I feel like we talked about just everybody here that we wanted to. Was there anybody else?
I guess the Jamal Williams stuff. That's a role. That's a role that's there for the taking. So if Kendre Miller's on your waivers, that's a shot I'm taking. You got two good chances before Kamara comes back, and I think Kamara is closer to going the way of Dalvin Cook than being his old self. So who knows? Maybe Kendre has a good path even once Kamara gets back if the competition's not too terribly stiff. But man, Jamal Williams got a good amount of work and did absolutely nothing with it. So it's wide open, and there's work there to be had. So that was one. I mean, if you look at it's right there with James Conner, like, woo, that's a lot of usage. So if Kendre could come in and take that as a 21-year-old running back who we like the profile, that could be exciting.
Jamal Williams chart disguised as a Kendrick chart.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now we go to the sort of backups, the quote unquote backups, running backs. I mean, Tajay Spears, we did touch on him. J.K. Dobbins, he got hurt, and then Jerome Ford is I think he's interesting here. Where I one thing that I've sort of observed of the Browns is that no matter who they have at running back, they always want to have some kind of committee. And like, it doesn't really matter if you know who the running back's name is, who's going to be the RB2. That like the RB2 is going to have some kind of role. It's never going to be an 80-20, or at least it's very rarely been for this coaching staff. So I think he's definitely a little interesting there as a pretty good. I mean, how many he'll be available in home leagues? Probably not too many high stakes, sort of like deeper leagues. But definitely that feels like a pretty decent value there if you got him. Probably not playing him in DFS. Can't imagine he's available on too many wires, like I said. But interesting. I think he is an interesting play for getting filling it like an RB2 spot, where you're just sort of getting points.
He did get a lot of mop up duty after the game was out of hand. I think 11 of his 15 carries came after the game was totally done. I think it was like in the fourth quarter. But I agree with you though that he is the clear RB2, right? He's the only running back that took any snaps on offense other than Nick Chubb. Pierre Strong played special teams. So Jerome Ford's the RB2. Don't worry about Pierre Strong. And so he's definitely the handcuff in the event that anything were to happen to Chubb. He misses any time.
Right.
And he's fine. There might, just like, I think it's probably going to be a lot closer to how Kareem Hunt was last season, where there's almost no week where you actually feel good if you do choose to start him. But there's like 2 weeks where he pays off, or he's fine, as a standalone value. But yeah, it's a stash. It's a bench stash for sure in redraft. A good handcuff option. Definitely. I mean, very, very clear signal that he's the RB2 on that team.
That's definitely fair. So what else stands out? I think it's interesting that you see a couple of Bears running backs here. Obviously, you had Roshan. He had a lot. He had a lot of high efficiency, so he actually delivered quite a good week. But I think it is at least interesting that you have this pretty clear three-way split. Like where you have I just missed Herbert there. Herbert, Roshan, and Donta there, all in the backup running back chart, and it does feel like you need someone to either separate or somebody get injured.
A lot of the Roshan work came kind of in garbage time. So I think that
the garbage time stuff again. It would help if I watch games.
That's that quantitative and qualitative flavors. We gotta get a little bit of both. 2 scoops. But I do think that you're likely looking at Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman at least early in the season. It's not like I think Roshan could absolutely carve out more of a role as we go on. He looked fine to me. I mean, I don't know ball, but he looked fine.
So you think that in more neutral scripts, or what you're saying is in more neutral scripts, it's Herbert and then Donta.
Yeah. Yes.
That's it. I think that's interesting and makes sense for sure.
I don't think Roshan gets no snaps in neutral scripts, but I think quite a bit of his work came in garbage time. Got it. And in week 2, if a different if it plays out differently, if Roshan's on the field more, maybe it just was, hey, when we're really needed to pass a lot, we like Roshan as our passing down back the most. You can kind of see, look at his pass blocking. Like, I think that does tell a little bit of the story as well. Like, he is the guy they prefer to use in that long down distance potentially. So,
I know with the range that Herbert sort of crept up to late in the season, that he might have if a drafted team got an injury or something like that, that he'd sort of would have been in consideration for starting as running back 2. I mean, that this is the sort of thing that would make me say, oh, okay, actually, unless things get really sort of dire at running back, I'm not feeling good about starting Khalil Herbert right now.
No, I wouldn't be super excited to plug him in. Not with much confidence right now. It's almost like, it's still Herbert for me, but would I do Hubbard or Herbert here?
Right. Yeah. I think that is an interesting differentiate or comparison point where I do feel like, and unless I'm completely missing somebody, you have a little bit more there with Chuba, with the fact that it's a bit more of a sort of like 2-back split, and so he only has 1 back to compete with to increase his snap share. I think the Panthers are probably pretty likely to throw a good deal more, so maybe have more pass attempts. So that one does feel like definitely a slight edge to Chuba, to me.
Yeah, I think they're close, but it's pretty interesting where after we get 1 week's worth of data, a lot of stuff, especially in those later rounds, like the prices that we had been paying for guys, like it starts to become clear, hey, we had the wrong read here, we had too much confidence here or there, and that's right. I mean, that's just why picks after a certain point aren't worth anywhere near as much as our early picks, because the degree of confidence we can have is so much lower. So.
Right. I agree there. And I think what you're alluding to there is that Chuba went a good bit after Herbert. So it is interesting that they're at least close.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else here that you want to talk about before we?
They'll show up on.
I will say we do have 2 more running back charts.
I was going to say they'll show up on the next chart, so I'll save it for there.
Yeah, good call. So here we have our so this is our expected fantasy points and efficiency. So on the kind of bottom horizontal axis here, we have rushing expected points, and then on the to the left here we have our receiving expected points. And you see these lines that go across. So this line here represents a total expected points of 15 expected points. And so you have Bijan here, who's sort of like 8-ish and 7. That's how he gets to 15. And and then also the size of the bubble is their points over expected. So bigger the bubble, you see CMC here, a lot of points over expected. And then you have let's see, Jalen Warren, which definitely disappointing for the for us so far, is low points over expected.
I mean, you can look at the hallmark low points over expected guys: Jamal Williams, Alexander Madison. Those are very uninspiring. I mean, obviously McCaffrey stands out huge. You can see Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly ran hot on getting a TD there, but he looked good. And yeah, if Eckler were to miss any time, that's a very, very exciting potential add there. Some of the other ones that stood out for me, you've got Gus Edwards way down there. And that's because Gus is getting the low calorie stuff, man. That's the guy where, hey, between the 20s, we want to run someone's face directly into a 300-pound man a couple times, just establish it. That's the Gus job. So he's an absolute zero in the passing game, right? Like he's not going to be involved there. And that is a wrinkle that we saw a little bit in week 1. How many targets did Dobbins? It was Dobbins 3 targets before he got injured. Like that's a lot for what Dobbins had put up in his career. So I think it's pretty clear signal that this offense wants to involve the running backs in the passing game more, and they're doing more stuff at and around the line of scrimmage as well, just in the way that they manufacture touches for Zay Flowers. But yeah, Edwards is one where I wanted to point that out because we'll see his backfield mate on the next chart. By the way these charts are divvied up, because we're going to have 2 charts that are both the running back expected fantasy points and efficiency chart. There's too many backs to display on one chart. It just gets too noisy. So it's literally just a split between odd even on the guys in the rankings on fantasy points over expected. So we're just oscillating that way. One chart doesn't get all the scrubs and one gets all the stars, and they get all clumped together.
So explain. Sorry, what did you say is the difference between this and the next one?
Yeah, they're just ranked by fantasy points over expected in a list, and then I just alternate.
Got it. So the next
first chart is the even chart. The next one's the odd chart. So that way you get good and bad running backs on both charts.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
In one chart or something.
Makes sense. So that's just for anybody who used to the way it was done last year. Last year was AFC and NFC. This year it's sort of a random sampling in both. Just because, like Zach said, you need to be able to see some of the details here.
Yeah, I got a little too clumped with the divisions, so I wanted to do it this way, spread it out a little bit more.
Oh yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
A guy that I mean, this shouldn't be a state secret or anything, but like Jahmyr Gibbs could, with only, what was it, 26% snaps or something like that. Like that's that role is going to increase, and I mean, my goodness, he's one, trip over his own shoestring away from scoring a touchdown in that game, and putting me in solo first place on the showdown slate. But we're not going to dwell on it. No, I think Gibbs is one where we definitely are going to see him ascend. Montgomery got like an inordinate amount of the high value touches that game.
Right.
And I do not think that the running back they drafted with early first round capital, who is specifically a passing game specialist, is going to see passing game work to David Montgomery at the rate that he did in week 1. I think that was purely like, that's the Lions do a lot of stuff like, the good old fashioned boomer organization. Like they're not the same as some of the more boomer organizations, but they definitely have that, rookies are going to earn their keep. I guess, unless your name is Sam Laporta, my goodness, we'll talk about him when we get to tight ends. But yeah, I think Gibbs was mostly a function of like, we're going to get you some reps here, but we're not going to overload you early. But I
Right.
can see that one increasing.
Easing you into your first week in the NFL.
Absolutely.
So, question then: would you the game one and what we're seeing here, does that push you up or down on where we were drafting Gibbs in best ball season?
For me, it had already, the price had already started to get a tiny bit frothy on underdog in half PPR. Just like him creeping into the late third round, I didn't think was correct there. Like he shouldn't have been going ahead of ETN. That was one where I was pretty constantly
and
doing
return in FFPC as well, which
that was also frothy. But like on DraftKings, where he would go at, and he crept up on DraftKings near the end of the season too. But he was like consistently into the third round or beginning of the fourth on DraftKings for a while in full PPR, and that's one where I was packing the bags. So I don't my take on him, my like assessment of where he fits in the market hasn't really changed. I think he's really good. I think the downsides to him are it's going to be the same stuff that we saw with Swift. Like the fantasy community is going to be frustrated he's not getting more work. He'll get plenty more than he got in week one. He's just too good of a player for them to deny that. I mean, how many tackles did he broke? Like 7 tackles or something. Like,
right, it was an absurd number.
He's so good. If you didn't watch the game, go back and just watch the.
If you didn't watch week one NFL, then the opening day game. What are you doing with us nerds?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I bet the number of people that are listening to this show and miss the game, I don't think.
I'm only joking. I think another thing that's interesting about Gibbs on Resurrection is that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Resurrection starts week 6, and so if and when it opens, hopefully this week, maybe next week, if and when it opens, if there's any kind of discount on Gibbs because he started off so anemic, it might actually be the cheapest that you get Gibbs available, because it'll draft up until it closes before week 6, and hopefully, and maybe I'm just wrong here. In line with what you're saying, it sort of creeps up as the week goes on, and so by the time you get what you're actually getting is week 6 through 17 Gibbs, which should be a whole lot better than weeks 1 through 5.
Yeah, very, very well put. I would say that if you give me Jahmyr Gibbs like in the mid to late 4th, I will have 100% Jahmyr Gibbs in Resurrection. Like I will literally have 100% if he's going there. I think into the 3rd, beginning of the 4th is probably about right for him. Just because we'll get a little more clarity. That wide receiver tier was so flat during the summer. Now I think we'll get that big giant tier broken into a couple smaller tiers. Now that bye Christian Kirk. Like that was unfortunate that I drafted some Christian Kirk in the 5th round. Like that one's gone. He's out of that tier.
Right.
And
sometimes we make bad picks and it's time to move on.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk will get steamed up, but those tiers will crystallize. They'll be a lot more clear, and so I think Gibbs is gonna, depending on how those wide receivers land, he's either gonna be right before like the next tier of wide receiver after that 3rd round group. I think like DK Metcalf still probably goes in the 3rd round there, like into the 3rd round, and Keenan Allen is still probably around there, right? But in that chunk of guys, I think Gibb goes right after that. And then depending on the quality of the receivers that make it into that next tier, he's either right after that very next tier receiver or he's before that one. That's kind of my read on it. And if the market disagrees with me and puts him later, I'll see y'all in week 17 with 100% Gibbs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I know we're an hour in, and we're on chart 4. Before I move on, is there anybody here who you think we can't we'd be criminal to to go without talking about?
Oh gosh. I mean, Kenneth Walker was that was one where I saw that and I felt like, okay, like he was priced relatively reasonably. I think what you're paying for with Kenneth Walker has always been the breakaway touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker is like diet ETN. That's a 0 in the passing game.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the way that I look at him. But yeah, he's one where I was more encouraged than discouraged by week 1. Charbonnet just didn't work in a ton, and that'll change as the season goes on. I'm sure Charbonnet will get more run. I know DJ Dallas got some snaps. I don't know how sticky that is. I tend to think that it's going to trend more towards just the Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet show. I think DJ Dallas might have been eating Charbonnet snaps more than anything. Eventually how it'll shake out. But that was one where, yeah, I felt like Kenneth Walker was appropriately priced.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Where, it's what you call it. He's in that 10 to 15 range, but with some efficiency, you can get some big time games. So yeah, let's move on to our odds charts, and yeah, so looking at it here, the big temptations would be to like, oh wow, Tyler Algier, bell cow, but I don't think that's necessarily right. I think he's sort of interesting as an early season play, but I guess he did play quite well, but it's sort of hard to see him like truly holding off a talent like Bijan for a full year.
Yeah, I think that Tyler Algier is going to do to Bijan, not in the same way, but not to the same magnitude rather, but he's going to be a thorn in Bijan's side the same way that David Montgomery is going to be a thorn in Gibbs' side. That team wants to use both those running backs, and they will both get an absurd amount of work if week 1 told us anything and if last season told us anything. So for people that drafted Tyler Algier when he was in like the 150s and 160s, congratulations. That was way inefficient of a price. He's going to continue to get work regardless of how good Bijan is. He might do, or Bijan might do to Algier what Algier did to Huntley last season, where, over the course of the season, we're going to see Bijan carve out more and more work. But I think Algier, especially at the early stretch of the season, he's very attractive. I would consider Algier like an RB2, lock it in pretty much every week, just the way that offense wants to operate.
Okay, so you think it's just it's sort of like stay pretty much in touch with the way that the offense used both players is going to stay pretty much in touch throughout the year.
It's going to trend towards Bijan certainly, but like if you look at how many opportunities they both got, it's plenty of opportunity. I think you're looking at both of them being locked in for 15 opportunities a week. And they were both Algier got a lot of passing game work too. They're both involved in the passing game. Can you imagine? I need you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine Arthur Smith being okay with them running a pass play inside the 5-yard line. Like, does that ever happen? Does this team score a passing touchdown in the green zone? Like, they're just going to run the damn ball.
I sort of see that where it's an offense that's like it's so rich for running backs that him just having a share it is quite valuable. I guess you were never having to pay a bell cow price. No, I don't know. You're never gonna get somebody in a trade or whatever, or maybe you will, but probably a hard ask to get somebody to pay like a high player return in a trade. Where would you draft him in Resurrection? Like,
he's like a solid, into the night. Like, is it ninth? Gosh, it might be. It's got to be higher than that. I was thinking like
I was just at ninth. That feels about where I had him, and you just disagreed with me.
I know. Maybe, maybe it's like, is it like late 7th, early 8th? I don't know. I just
let me ask you this: is Tyler Algier in the 7th? Is that a dead zone pick, or is that something where no he if you get him 7 or 8, you're really happy with that pick?
I mean, not to make the same comparison again, but I look at it like I looked at David. I was happily clicking David Montgomery at his price, right? All off season. That's behind a really good offensive line. They want to run the ball. And, we saw last season, Jamal Williams ran hotter than the sun on touchdowns, but
right.
That offense can score rushing touchdowns, and they are happy to give work to their running backs. And it's the same thing in Atlanta. They have a good running game. They want to give work to the running backs. So I think I think the Algier to Montgomery comparison is pretty good and pretty close to how I would view both of their prices.
And to be fair, Tyler Algier is probably compares better. He's younger. I'm pretty sure. I know he was an old rookie, but he is a second-year player, and he played well, whereas Monty played not well.
Yeah.
So maybe David Montgomery plus is like a good way to. I know that's what we're saying. Maybe Monty plus is a good way to look at him.
Yeah. Another one I wanted to bring up here is Josh Jacobs. I mean, from week 1, elite usage. They're putting the ball in his belly, but he did turn back into a pumpkin a little bit on the efficiency front. Last season, he was just otherworldly. I mean, he wanted that bag. And I don't know if this, could just be week 1, small sample size. I don't know if the trend holds, but I'm like slightly concerned that Josh Jacobs is just going to be like absolute crap ton of volume, not terribly efficient. He didn't have a ton of expected points in the receiving game. Like you see ETN with more expected receiving points than him. You see, he's like right about in line with AJ Dillon. So slightly concerned about Jacobs. I mean, he's going to get so much work that it's probably fine though.
Yeah. And one way that I like to look at the over expected is I like to try to break it into yardage and touchdowns. And obviously you have to be very careful with splits because we're dealing with very small sample sizes. But one thing that does seem pretty notable is that of his I think he was minus 11 or so in expected points. 9.4 of those was in touchdowns, was in getting goal line touches and not scoring. And that does feel like something that might be a week 1 thing, where if you think the Raiders offense is better than the market was giving credit for, and I think we've gotten an indication that it is, and that they will be making trips to the goal line, and that they're going to continue to feed them there. I think maybe I think there is a case that his I guess rest of season points outlook is maybe a good bit better than what his week 1 stats look like. But having said that, I probably wouldn't be too far away from you in terms of pricing him. I probably still need a decent discount to his best ball season ADP to be drafting him. I'm Jacobs, yeah.
Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley?
Oh, Josh Jacobs. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I did the thing where I said to you, oh yeah, let's make sure we use the names, and when we're talking about players, and then I just said him. So yeah, Josh Jacobs. Lots of goal line touches. Did not convert them. That's usually volatile. And even though I'm not drafting him, but if I were somebody who was quite bullish on him going into the season, maybe that doesn't push me quite off of that opinion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have been more clear with my question. I was saying, who do you prefer, Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley?
Or Saquon. Okay. Who do I prefer? You're gonna have to give me a second. So honestly, probably Jacobs.
I think it's close. I mean, the only modicum of success the Giants showed against the Cowboys was those early runs where they were able to get a little bit of Barkley up the middle going for them. Anything outside was not great, but they looked like they could at least get some yards created up the middle with their run blocking. But yeah, I felt like that was those guys are probably, I think they're in the same tier. Would you consider them same tier?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I think they are. They're definitely in the same tier. And the only thing I would say is, and maybe did Saquon have the thing where he came off the field just because they were getting smashed so much?
Yeah. At the end of the game,
Okay.
Daniel Jones still had to stay in there and get his turds pushed in. Saquon got to go get nice and cozy on the bench and put his parka on and get out of the rain. I just can't. Dude, Daniel Jones did something to upset that coaching staff. He kicked someone's dog or slept with someone's wife.
They were like, you know what? We're paying you all this many $1 million. You are just going to take this punishment and like it.
He took a lot of it, man. That was gratuitous.
So maybe I'm trying to think. Maybe Saquon probably is one where it's a little bit harder to really gauge where he's supposed to go, just because we didn't have a proper game script.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe I'm flip flopping a bit here, and just because I'm trying to think through it. But maybe the kind of indication that we got that he definitely still has some juice, and if they continue to give him the sort of usage that he got last year with maybe better receiving, then absolutely he's better than Jacobs. But I do think we definitely sort of got more week one bullish signals with the usage and the goal line work from Jacobs than Saquon.
I do want to, before we move on, I wanted to bring up one more back here. So we've got James Conner and Rachaad White, two guys that were drafted really close together all offseason. They both land in that 10 to 15 expected fantasy points band here. And I know you've got some thoughts on Rachaad White's backfield, mate, that I wanted to let you expand on here a little bit.
I pretty straightforward. I think that Rachaad White has now given us a decent. He gave us a season one sample that he's pretty bad. He played really bad in week one, and I like you alluded to, I do like Sean Tucker quite a bit. So the fact that he played fairly well and White played poorly, that does make me pretty interested. And in terms of like where I'd price it, I think one of the concerns going into the year was that, oh well, what if they only see Tucker as a rushing guy? They're bad. The offense is bad, and like you just don't want to rush her in that type of environment. I think the Tampa Bay offense was like good enough for that type of back to be quite a good bit interesting. And if it's one of those things like when does it flip? It has to flip eventually, you feel like it has to flip eventually, but it's hard to predict when. So I think I'm probably quite comfortable taking Tucker. Maybe and this is probably pretty aggressive. Maybe 12th through 14th round now.
I was right there with you in the 12th round, so I don't think that's too aggressive at all.
Okay.
Because let's hypothetically say he just takes Rachaad White's lunch. He's the captain. He's the captain now. He gets the same opportunity. He's not fallen in this 10 to 15 expected fantasy point band. The only reason Rachaad White, fell here was he couldn't do anything with it.
Right.
Sean Tucker could easily be. I think your bull case for Sean Tucker is he starts to break into that 15 to 20 expected fantasy point band, and so that's a guy where I want to take a shot on. And then I know we're just spending all the time in the world on every chart, but there is one guy. I mean, He was the thumbnail on the show. We got to talk about Justice Hill. With J.K. Dobbins being injured, I already spent some time shitting on Gus Edwards' inefficiency, or I guess inefficiency of or efficiency in the past. But no longer, is this 28 going on 29-year-old plotter going to be the guy that you want in this backfield where they want to involve backs in the passing game? So, I mean, if you've seen me talk about Justice Hill at all this offseason, you know that I'm the captain of the Justice Hill fan club. But a big part of the thesis was he was literally the only guy at OTAs that was going to make the 53-man roster getting snaps. And if you believe the beat reporters, they were saying that Todd Monken loves him. He wants to have him be super involved in the passing game. It's a player that they really like. And then you fast forward and you get to training camp, and he's still one of the only guys that's actually out there getting reps. Dobbins was doing the hold-in thing. Gus Edwards wasn't totally healthy. It's the Justice Hill show. And Justice Hill, he doesn't profile as the kind of guy that can get a bell cow workload, nor do I even think it's not in the range of outcomes for him to get all the work. But you don't need that with a play like this. I always saw Justice Hill thesis as the same Jerick McKinnon thesis that I had the season prior, which was this guy's going undrafted in the 18th round. He is, in a semi-ambiguous backfield. For the Ravens, I didn't think it was terribly ambiguous as J.K. Dobbins is the dude, but the RB2 was ambiguous. I think the offense has a chance to be the offense that scores the most touchdowns in the NFL. They want to involve their backs in the passing game, and this guy could get a lot of high-value touches. And that's the thesis. He's like 190 pounds. He's not some world beater or anything. But he is a plus. It was interesting
that he got goal line touches, right?
He got goal
satellite back, so you feel comfortable about getting receiving usage. And then when Dobbins was down, he was the first one in on the goal line.
Yep, and he got 2 goal line touches. It was, and it's not like they forgot about Gus. They brought Gus Edwards in for a 2-point conversion, and then it was like, all right, but when it's time for the real money, let's get Justice Hill on the field for the TDs. And in the preseason, we saw him deliver splash plays. Like, he's explosive, he's fat. I'm all in Justice Hill, man. That's a league winner for me. Go put all the money in the middle on him and waivers. That's the one you want this week.
So, am I right in surmising that he's sort of like he's sort of like an Eckler light? Like that's what you're shooting for.
Well, that would be like his best. Outcome. Would be
That's
after,
obviously best outcome. But like even though he's only 190 pounds, you still get outcomes where like he's heavily involved in the passing game, and he's quite involved on the goal line.
I look at it as, what would you pay to get that 6-game stretch that we got from Jerick McKinnon at the end of last season? What would you pay for that? And we don't, maybe Justice Hill manages to string it together for longer. Maybe he does only get like a 6-game stretch. He can't hold up. He's only 190 pounds. He's had injury issues in the past. Maybe they bring in another back, trade for JT, whatever. But what would you pay for that 6-game stretch where he's dropping multiple 30-point games, and it's on the back of touchdowns? It's not that Jerick McKinnon was out here racking up all these yards. It's dude just got a couple touchdowns because his offense is good and they throw the ball,
Yeah, makes sense for sure. And like you said, we couldn't do this without mentioning the cover boy. So let's move on to tight ends. I'm gonna change the zoom on this a little bit. And so what we've got here is we've got sort of like the percentage of passing plays that a tight end is on the field. And then we've got that sort of broken up into routes, which is what we care about, and then pass blocking. So you can kind of see if a guy is on the field a lot, he's just pass blocking for a lot of it. And so that's where you get, let's say, Cade Otton. He is on the field for almost 100% of the Tampa Bay Bucks passing downs. But because he's pass blocking for quite a bit of it, that brings his pass route down to just over 70%. And then what we have here on the left, if you're tracking over here, we have targets per route run and ADOT. And it's sort of what we're trying to do is trying to find out who's billed as a tight end but closer to a receiver. And so you see KDOT in here, really low target per route run. And then pretty kind of tight endish A.2. And that's not the shit on K.Dotton or anybody who took K.Dotton. I think that's kind of the outcome that you're sort of like you were expecting that outcome when you drafted K.Dotton. You're getting him super late, and you knew he wasn't kind of like he's not Travis Kelce or anything, and you're hoping for a week where he scores a touchdown. But just kind of a way that we look at this data. Whereas on the other hand, it's actually quite difficult to find a tight end who looks like a tight end this week. But let's say you've got a TJ Hawkinson here. He had similar routes run, but his routes were a lot more important. He got double the targets per run, and then you can kind of this chart does tell a story of a struggle week for tight ends a little bit, because like normally what you're looking for a guy who's maybe 75 to 90 in route share, 20 some in the range of 20 per target per out run, and then like a wide receiver ish 8 to 12 ADOT. We're not seeing that here, but definitely some good takeaways for the chart.
Can I interest you in some Luke Musgrave at 17% targets per route run, just about 80% routes, and an 18 ADOT?
For sure, definitely. I think you run that is definitely really interesting. So you're probably not going to be able to sustain the 18 ADOT, but combined with a 17% target per route run, and you've got the high route share, you feel pretty good about that tight end role, right?
Yeah, some of the ones that stood out to me as, I'm full on hitting the panic button for these guys. It's Dalton Schultz. I'm pretty sure that's just like not a playable tight end. Dalton Schultz is the same thing as like, oh gosh, what's what's the name of the blocking tight end for Minnesota that signed that big old contract? Yeah, but Dalton Schultz is out here just running cardio, like 8% targets per route run, no ADOT, like woof. Some that I also saw where I was like a little concerned, I'm not like full on alarm for, is David Njoku did a fair amount of pass blocking, didn't run a ton of routes, low ADOT. I mean, it was a monsoon game, so I don't really care that much. The other Isaiah Likely was a little disappointing.
Isaiah Likely very disappointing, I thought.
I think we saw enough last season from him to know that he's good, though. So I'm not. I think I'm more willing to write this off as like it was a bad game. It also, like, if we're thinking this might be more signal, it could just be like, hey, they now have target earners here. Like Zay Flowers is here and he's going to earn targets, and Bateman is healthy. And even though Bateman didn't run a full complement of routes, he wasn't on the field a ton, he still earned targets. And so that might be, if Andrews misses time, maybe Likely doesn't see that same significant increase in value that he saw last season.
That does seem the question, like, because like I know people in their head, they had like mental heuristic. Andrews goes down, Isaiah Likely, basically Andrews, and just run with it. So wouldn't you say it's fair to say that idea is it? It feels like either that idea was not correct, or Mark Andrews is in trouble because of the issues pushing Likely down here.
I'm not ready to say Mark Andrews is in trouble because I'm not either. I do think that he is just a better talent than Isaiah. Isaiah Likely is an exciting talent, but like he's not Mark Andrews. So I'm more willing to just call this a bad game, maybe a little fluky, but I'm filing it away in my mental filing cabinet of, if Mark Andrews misses time, I'm going to have a lot lower confidence in Likely than I would have previously of like, it's a smash. That's how I think about it. But speaking of guys that are smashes, we said there weren't a ton that kind of checked our boxes. Can I interest you in some Logan Thomas? Like 23% targets per route run, not a super exciting ADOT, but he was involved. I'm just hoping that maybe that was like a little hiccup for Washington. Maybe Sam Howell can string it together. Bieniemy can get some stuff figured out for that offense, and they can get humming as the season moves along, and Howell gets more real live reps in the NFL because dude's played 2 games now. So, we can just kind of treat – it's not like Sam Howell was sitting behind some great quarterback learning last season, like not to crap all over Taylor Heineke, but it's not like he had all this time to develop behind one of the greatest minds in the game. I think it's fair to expect that Howell might be a little raw. And I think Logan Thomas is certainly interesting. The tight end landscape's a wasteland. So anyone getting over 20% targets per route run and being involved in the offense is one where I'm going to be at least a little interested.
Yeah, I agree. And definitely. So I think maybe you disagree, but he solidifies himself as like kind of a late tight end target.
I don't disagree because I think I'm sitting here with like 15% Logan Thomas. So
the question would be in resurrection stuff. Does this meaningfully change? Like maybe I'm thinking maybe this changes them from like maybe not draftable to probably good in the 15th.
I think the only reason he wasn't getting drafted was the injury concerns. I think people wanted that role potentially, right? I never really bought into the Bieniemy's tight end. It's the Travis Kelce role. It's like, no, it's not the Travis Kelce is the reason that there's the Travis Kelce role. Like it's not that whatever tight end plays in this offense is just a skeleton key, like he's gonna smash. But I do think he's interesting. I think Logan Thomas is interesting for sure. It's definitely one where he should be drafted. It's just still there's the injury risk, so he hasn't stayed healthy for a long time.
Right. So then it sounds like maybe you're are you drafting him earlier than
I
so
take him a little earlier. I'd comfortably have him.
Where would he become a target for you?
It's on Howl teams that he's a target. I'm probably not taking him naked a ton,
Got it.
But like the late rounds don't matter. The ADP doesn't matter. We're not good. The market's so bad
No
at pricing. So
fair
like
point, for sure.
Who cares? 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, it's the same. I'll take him anywhere in there where it just depends on my roster construction, what I need. If I need 3 late tight ends and I'm like, okay, I really want to make sure that I get Logan Thomas, and I want to make sure that I'm grabbing Adam Troutman because I'm a masochist, then sure, I'll click him wherever I need to in those rounds.
But you're taking him at a spot where it's kind of like low opportunity cost stage.
Yeah. I'm not. He's certainly not like moving up. He's not creeping up into like the 13th or something for me.
So I guess the one other player that we have to talk about is that Durham Smite, where literally 100% of pass plays and was checking before. It wasn't like there was some weird injury that he was the only healthy tight end there. Like, no, that's his role. He maybe he's not 100% all year, but pretty like this is like in terms of like snaps and routes, this is like pretty much elite. 14% target per out run is like a mediocre tight end, I think, but at elite snaps, it's like holy. Like if that holds, he's basically the late tight end of the season.
Yeah, like, we should have been drafting Durham Smythe, everybody.
And it becomes for me, a type of player like that becomes quite challenging, because if that just holds, then he's probably like, I don't know, like honestly a pretty strong like 12th, 11th, 10th round target, which that feels aggressive, but like I'm like, just from the maths of it, if that holds, and like I don't see a compelling reason to think that it doesn't hold. Like
I'd say as far as like his price, I don't have high conviction in the market's ability to price all of the tight ends efficiently. So if they price Smythe efficiently, there's other guys that are priced inefficiently, and I won't take Smythe then.
The reason I like to talk about these players in terms of like ADP and stuff like that, just because it for me and this is I guess for everyone as well. For me, if it feels like a way where it forces me to be honest. It forces me to compare players. It forces me to like really like get in the gut of like, okay, I'm forced into a decision. What do I do? And it sounds like you're in terms of Durham Smite, you're like, okay, that feels like it might be efficient to a tad aggressive, and it'll be easy for me to ignore that. And then if he's much later than that, then smashing it all day long. And I completely agree with that. I think that's the way I would play it as well. But I'm just trying to come up with like a way where I'm forced to put a number on, I'm forced to put something objective on a player.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And yeah, so hypothetically, if he was going in the 12th round and without knowledge of, assuming the market gets everyone efficient, right?
Right.
Then I probably am taking some shots on him in the 12th. And I'm certainly going to be more prone to do it with Tua. I really want that tight end to quarterback correlation. I think it's super valuable, just especially with Smythe, where what is such a large percentage of his fantasy points this season are going to come from touchdowns. So I just want those correlated with my quarterback. So like in DFS, if I'm ever playing Durham Smythe, I'm never playing Durham Smythe without Tua, right? Like
Yeah, total sense.
Yeah, and in best ball, like I'm probably not drafting a ton of Durham Smythe without Tua, but if he's like falling past ADP, I'm taking him. And yeah, if he's going in the 12th, that's probably efficient because we end up with a lot of the gross guys that were more ambiguous in the 12th round. Like Dalton Schultz ain't going in the 12th anymore. Like that's gone. Another one I wanted to bring up, I could sit here and talk about Durham Smythe all day. What do we do with Zach Ertz, man? What do we do about Zach Ertz?
It sort of feels like who I wanted. What's his name? Who's the other tight end for the Cardinals?
Oh my gosh,
Trey McBride.
Trey McBride. Thank you.
It feels like no, thank you. It feels like who we wanted Trey McBride to be. And again, it feels similar to what's his name, Logan Thomas, where it's like this older guy, but elite role, like completely elite role, and so hard to ignore. Again, if it's I think he's similar in that, like where if you find yourself like just needing a late guy, and it's like he's gonna be a target in teams where you need late tight ends, but don't want to pay middle round prices.
Yeah, my biggest, so like weekly, like Zach Ertz could be a great DFS play. I haven't seen the prices on Ertz, but like he's the kind of guy where in a single week that could absolutely be a great tight end punt, especially if he's cheap. But for like a resurrection tournament, oh my goodness, am I really gonna bet on Zach Ertz maintaining this role all the way through the season? Like that seems very thin to me, and so. I guess if you're taking it as an advanced rate play, like you could.
Stone Min on DraftKings.
And it's who are Cardinals at next week?
Let me tell you just now. Arizona are at home to the Giants.
Don't dupe me, bros. It's Zach Ertz 100% in the tight end slot on DK this week, locking it in.
And so actually not Stone Min, I'm an idiot. He's 3,500.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was dumb.
Stone Min would have had me got me bricked up there for some Stone Min Zach Ertz at 32% targets per route run.
And then Logan Thomas, he's 3,100 away to at Denver.
Okay.
And so I guess given the comparison, if it does feel like you're stronger on Thomas than Ertz, is that just the offense and that you expect to be better?
Despite Thomas also being old, he's not as old as Zach Ertz, and he's also a better athlete. That he has always been a better athlete than Zach Ertz, and so if I'm assuming both these guys are healthy, I think Thomas could deliver me a splash play. I don't think there's not a universe where Zach Ertz gets a breakaway touchdown. He's
right.
never gonna house one from. He could get some end zone targets, but he's not breaking away from.
Right, he was always the fall down, catching him fall down. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm being mean here. I think they're like only 6 months apart in age.
Are they really? Oh my god! Wow. I guess Logan Thomas just spent a lot of time injured then.
He spent a lot of time injured and playing and trying to be a starting quarterback.
Yeah, was he an old prospect coming in too?
I think he might have been.
Okay, that would track.
Like he started playing tight end at like 29 or 30.
Okay, I know he was a converted quarterback, but that makes sense. The other, I wanted to go and look at Hayden Hurst, who put up a fine box score this week.
Right.
Wasn't on the field a ton, didn't run a ton of routes, but he was the leading target earner on that team. And it might just end up playing out as the rookie quarterback safety blankie narrative, which,
right. I'll go out on a limb and say I think that like Hayden Hurst being the low root share, high target guy doesn't feel super sustainable. Like,
Okay.
I mean, maybe you want to disagree, but it feels like those types of combinations are normally like sort of gadget guys or players that are like real tough matchups, and like maybe they're really big. They go in when they're on the end zone. Hayden Hurst, he doesn't strike me as that type of like player. So I do have that. That's one where I have a hard time like seeing sustain.
I agree with you. If he runs this number of routes every week, yeah, I don't think it's sustaining. My thesis for how does Hayden Hurst continue to return fantasy value would be that they see that, dude, we can't complete passes to anyone. You know, we got Terrace Marshall out here going 2 for 6, and like,
Right.
are we really going to throw more to Laviska Shenault and like Adam Thielen? Like, they just refuse to let Adam Thielen take his walker on the field, and he can't make a break without it. So like maybe Hayden Hurst sees a little
maybe
bit
he's
more.
the only target earner.
Yes, that's maybe he gets more routes and he's on the field more, just out of necessity is what I could see happening. But it's also Chark was out this week, so maybe it's just Chark gets healthy and Hurst maintains this amount of route share and he turns back into a pumpkin after week 1.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just last one before we move on. Laporta was interesting. It's definitely where you drafted him, you're happy to see him on the starting tight end chart. You're happy to see the 19% target per rep run. You're probably not too pleased to see the 4 ADOT. But this feels like a sort of like a neutral-ish to ADP outcome for week 1 for Laporta. And what you call it? Maybe a slight win in terms of like the rookie tight end. He is playing, and perhaps as the season goes on, he does end up at the top of this chart. And if he can keep the rest of his numbers and maybe increase his ADOT, become a big win.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty bullish for Laporta to be, because you got to remember that team, that organization, they have been slow to bring on rookies in their offense.
No, you're right.
And so that was pretty strong signal to me that they think this guy is a dude. Like they want him on the field.
They love Gibbs and they barely played him. Whereas
Laporta was earning targets. Like he was involved often. The low ADOT is like, you'd love to see, a higher ADOT, but
yeah,
I think the way that offense is set up right now, before they get Jameson Williams back, which who knows how that's going to even work when Jameson's back, like, is he even useful? But right now they don't really have anyone that's a field stretcher that can operate in that deep, those deep areas of the field. Like, it's not Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones looked bad, and Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds looked like Josh Reynolds. He's fine. He was serviceable. But do you think that Laporta could end up getting a higher ADOT just out of necessity for the team to function? Like they need someone to operate there?
I think. I think maybe I'm probably I'm saying 4.2, and then it's like, well, he got 5 targets. Like, talk about a small sample size.
Yeah.
Like, who maybe his true ADOT right now is 8, even without any factors like being in at all. And then the receivers absolutely stink. So like, if he's any good at all, like it pretty much becomes a necessity to involve him down the field.
So in a resurrection tournament, you said you thought this was neutral ish for his ADP.
Yeah.
Where you'd be taking him at the same ADP in a resurrection tournament?
Well, I was actually taking Laporta quite a bit already. So maybe that's a misleading thing for me to say.
Mostly on FFP, just to clarify.
Yeah,
mostly
that was on FFPC,
which people forget is tight end premium.
It's tight end premium, and honestly, I was thinking in terms of FFPC, which was me a couple. That's not correct. I wasn't drafting on UD and enough to know where was Laporta going.
He had crept up a lot. He was like in the early 140s by the end of the draft season.
Okay, so yeah, definitely better than neutral.
Yeah,
I think you're happily taking him 10th through 12th. And
I was going to say 10th is the high end as well. So we agree.
So yeah, that was a misstatement by me. So I'm glad you pointed to that.
It's okay. I know you have FFPC brain.
Yeah, just a little bit. So I think we almost have to skip the backup tight end chart.
I have two. We'll keep it.
Okay,
I'll keep this tight on this one because I know we've been almost 2 hours now. But
yeah,
there's two that stood out here to me. One was Freiermuth. This is noise. He got injured. He hurt his chest. He came back. He's fine. He'll have way
great
more
call.
runs.
So Pat Freiermuth still a starting tight end.
Yeah, don't panic on Freiermuth. The other one is absolutely elite targets per route run. Jake Ferguson, 43%. And if you watch the game, this was intent. Like Ferguson was an early read in the progression. There was a lot of stuff for Ferguson. And I thought there was a chance that the Cowboys tight end role would change with Kellen Moore leaving. It did not. The role is the same. That is always going to be the safety blanket outlet. That is the low ADOT but high volume role that we've seen Cowboys tight ends have.
And we're seeing him on the backup tight end chart here. But that's probably they were up by so much.
He did not play a ton when we were just running Rico Dowdle, straight up the middle, or given. I loved Kevontae Turpin just out there getting like carries in the second half. We had him early as some gadgety stuff. It's like, let's throw Kevontae Turpin out there in the second half. Get him some more carries. Let's throw Deuce Vaughn made an appearance. It was a great day to be a Cowboys fan, man. I was thoroughly enjoying myself week 1.
I'm very happy for you, but we do have to talk about wide receivers.
We do, and these charts are charts that are pretty dense with information. So I'm going to dive right into it. I'll kind of explain what these are. These are going to be the wide receiver opportunity charts versus fantasy points. So the y-axis is going to be noisy this week. It's just 1 week of sample. It's the fantasy points they scored this week.
Yeah.
The x-axis is their weighted targets per route run. I can't remember if anyone ended up over 100% weighted targets per route run, but that is possible with weighted targets per route run, just because we're also incorporating the depth of target in there. And so you can see right away, Brandon Ayuk
he's a notorious. He breaks.
I believe he does break the next chart. Yeah. Ayuk obviously looked elite. There was drumbeat on him all offseason that he's going to take the next leap. Week 1 certainly looks that way. I'm not ready to crown him yet as like the wide receiver 1 on that team. I think the way that team's points get distributed every week
is it Puka or Puka?
Puka Nacua.
Puka. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just rambling about Ayuk. I think it's going to be pretty highly variant, though, the way that the Niners points get distributed. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Ayuk and Debo literally switch, places on these charts in future weeks. I think it's going to be very highly variant. But that's not to take anything away from Ayuk. He's probably a smash at his price in drafts and should go higher in resurrection tournaments.
Right.
Puka, let's talk about Puka though, because that's one that people have to make decisions on waivers, and that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is an interesting one in that, it was sort of a reason that he was going so late. But then when you see him play so well in the NFL, you do have to respond. When you see someone get a 90% root share, despite their injury to Cup, you see heavily targeted. It's hard. It's really hard to fade a receiver who's getting high root share and high target per route run, like, because there's not a lot of room to like shit on that, and it's one of those things where I always feel uncomfortable betting on these like guys out of nowhere, but I think it's like you get opportunities like this so few and far between that he is someone where if I've got some injuries at wide receiver already, I think I do want to be quite aggressive on getting him.
I think that's how you have to play it. You don't have, if you have injuries at wide, if you need wide receiver starters, you don't really have the luxury to be like, oh, well, what if
right?
Puka Nacua? No, that's not for real. Like, I don't think you have the luxury to do that. You just have to, there's a probability where the bet doesn't hit and he turns back into a pumpkin, but there's also an outcome where even after Cooper Kupp comes back, this is the wide receiver 2 in the offense, and it's an offense that hasn't had a wide receiver 2 in years. And it could be a guy that, we look back on at the end of the season. It's like, how did we miss this? Like this,
right?
So I don't think you have the luxury of waiting patiently on Puka Nacua. He arrived in too big of a way in week 1. If you need him, you got to be pretty aggressive on it, I think. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Aaron in the chat asked how much fab on Puka. What do you think? I'm still undecided.
I'm probably not the best. I'm not as good as Steph or a resident sort of fab queen. So whatever she says after this is the right answer. But I think, especially if you need a receiver, like I think, honestly, like 50 to 60% is like fine.
I was in my head, I had like 35%, but you might be, like if what we saw is like not too crazy of a ceiling game for Puka, if it's like, nah, this guy's just gonna get he's earning targets,
right?
You're not wrong. Like you should spend 60% on a player like that. So I guess it comes down to like knowing the league that you're in and what they're gonna make you pay to get Puka, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to feel like the idiot who paid 60 when the next highest bid was 27 or something like that. But I'm more trying to think of like what's an efficient bid. And I think that's right. But it's like you said, you do have to be careful that you're not overestimating your league mates.
Guys that I am looking at here as like a potential buying opportunity. So my goodness, did Ryan Tannehill looked atrocious, like really bad. But DeAndre Hopkins is I think he's still fine. I think you definitely. I mean, I don't really know how the quarterback play improves a ton. I don't think they make a switch and get better quarterback play, right? So I think you're just banking on Ryan Tannehill to come back and show that he's a competent NFL quarterback, which he has been. He's supported high-end receivers before, so I think just like chalk game 1 up as a bad game, and be willing to say DeAndre Hopkins is still, getting elite weighted targets per route run. And
are you buying Are you buying? I see Traylon Burks hanging out here with the cardio club, and Nuke way ahead of him, like you pointed out. and that sort of like would feed into this narrative of like, you know, Nuke, he's going to earn so many targets that there's nothing left for Burks. I'm maybe stubborn. I have a hard time buying it. Are you buying that differential?
No, I think that Burks is going to creep much closer to Hopkins. I think what we're seeing is that he had an injury and they were easing him back. You know, I don't think that sticks. And also, like last season got derailed for him too because of injury. So it's
right.
I just think we're still early in the Traylon Burks, you know, career arc, and he absolutely, we almost were getting the breakout last season, and then he got knocked into an alternate dimension, you know, and concussed in the end zone on that play. And so I think that we could still see, like, I can see it pretty clearly, like that there's a week where the Traylon Burks has arrived game happens. It's like, holy shit. Like, how did this guy ever fall to the 9th round? Like, that was a mistake, you know?
So we're buying the Traylon Burks dip is what we're saying.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we're buying the Traylon Burks dip. Guys that I'm in that cardio club range where I'm like, yeah, I'm good off that. Oh man, Drake London is so scary to me. If he dips enough, I'm just gonna take shots on the talent and like assume I'm in my mind, the way I'm gonna sell myself on when I click Drake London in Best Ball Resurrection is that it won't be like week 1 every week. They can't possibly throw this few passes. There have to be more passes. That's what I'm telling myself. To be able to click Drake London. And if you get a deep enough discount, I think the talent is elite to where it could pay off in a huge way. So I pray that the market overreacts aggressively.
Yeah.
I just don't want the market to middle it. I don't want to be staring down like 6th round Drake London, wondering if I'm supposed to click him. I want to be looking at like 9th or 10th round Drake London and getting it in and feeling great about it. Or him sitting in the 5th, and I just don't do it.
Sounds a little bit like you do view this game negatively, and we talked about it with Ritter, but still at a cheaper price, you're just as excited to bet on that 99% all outcome.
Yeah, I am. I'm pretty sure that I lose a lot of the time on the bet.
Listen, we martingale.
Yeah, it's one of the bets where when it pays off, like that's why I'm making the bet, because when it pays off in such a crazy way. Like there's an outcome where Drake London's a 2nd round pick next season. You know, like Drake London goes for 1,210 touchdowns this season. Like it's in the range. It doesn't happen often. I don't think it's very likely. But that can happen for Drake London in a way where it can't happen for other guys in this quadrant. For example, like that can't happen for Van Jefferson. That is not in the range. Like that can't happen. Like even Marquise Brown, who I think is a very good receiver, like without a trade, like that can't happen for Marquise Brown.
Right.
That offense won't score 10 touchdowns total, you know, like another guy I wanted to bring up here. What do you think about George Pickens, who's also in this quadrant, you know, floating near teammate Allen Robinson, and then you've got his other teammate Deontay dealing with the hamstring. How do you view George Pickens going forward?
I think Pickens is a hard one, because you do have the noise about and I think we talked about this before with Pickens, that you have the off-season chatter that like, oh, this guy doesn't separate, and then you get in and then his targets were actually not great that last year, and then you get in week 1 and again targets not great. I think maybe just because he has been so good at kind of jump balls that you do want to be a little bit patient. Like definitely for me, it's a point into negative, so like dropping them down slightly. But it's like it's still in a sort of range. It's close enough to the middle of the range. Like it's not that far from CD Lamb, for example, where you can still see, okay, what if that's just the bottom of the range, and going forward, if what's his name, Pickett can pick it up. Now, granted, I went on record of saying that I'm not too confident in that. Pickens could be a good pick, but yeah, I think you sort of need like you probably need a round and a half sort of discount on ADP and given that, but I guess you do have to caveat that it's week one, and that could just be a true outlier for him.
Yeah, I wanted to. Aaron in the chat asked, "Are we hoping Bateman outlasts OBJ? He once seemed promising, but seems third fiddle." If you look at the target, OBJ was on the field a ton, and Bateman was not. But OBJ didn't really earn a bunch of targets. I believe Bateman's going to be on another chart here,
right?
Because he didn't get a ton of snaps. But I do want to dovetail that into their teammate, Zay Flowers, who, if week one was any indication, Zay Flowers was grossly mispriced in drafts.
Yeah.
Like, I think the efficient Zay Flowers should have been going right around where, like, late 4-5 turn.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not. So that's one where I'm pretty sure the market's going to correct too hard. The market's going to correct, to the upside for him, just because he's a rookie. He's exciting, and now we're starting to see they want to use this guy. But that was one where, looking at the usage, I mean, he's getting carries, like they're manufacturing touches for him, like,
right.
And he looked good, so that's an exciting one.
Yeah, I agree, and given that's a nice kind of segue to the next chart.
There's our chart breaker. There's Tyreek over 100% weighted targets per route run.
Yeah, I'll hail our merciless overlord. So yeah, I think that this one you get this chart is sort of interesting in that you get these guys that are very much starters, and then they are wildly efficient with their routes. You get those kind of four guys, even including Nico Collins. Honestly, very efficient in terms of their target earning. And then you get a lot of other guys sort of bunched around. I think the most interesting ones to me are Jalen Waddle, very sort of average with his weighted targets per route run. Just do not expect that to continue into the rest of the year. And then Elijah Moore, that feels maybe I'm wrong to be disappointed. It feels a little bit disappointing just because I thought that if he was getting this kind of route share, that he'd be earning targets a little better than that. But maybe that's just a kind of a week one thing.
I think it might be a week one thing and just a function of the game. They were, I'm not ready to write off Elijah Moore yet. I also think that Jalen Waddle, when we think about Jalen Waddle, him getting so many fewer weighted targets per route run than we'd expect is a direct function of Tyreek just dominating the game, right?
Yeah.
I've got a really gross hot take for you if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
It's that a Nico Collins, Robert Woods, CJ Stroud double stack is going to win a Millie Maker this season. It feels like a hot take, but I don't know that it's that crazy in my opinion.
Right. What you're talking about with like low to middle salaries, right?
I'm talking about they're super cheap, and I just play the vomit stack, and I end up jamming in the studs and spots that I want to be able to fit into one lineup. And they do just enough. Nico gets double-digit targets again. Robert Woods gets double-digit targets, and I laugh my way to the bank. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Another thing. So I don't. One thing that I normally look for on this chart is guys who sort of jump off the page a little bit, and are sort of unheralded, and how do I say this? Demanding a higher root share. I don't see a lot of that here. A lot of the players I see here are just kind of like borderline starter cardio club guys. Very disappointing to see. Well, not that disappointing. Chase Claypool, not earning targets. Josh Palmer, DPJ, Paris Campbell, Quez Watkins, MVS. They all seem like those kind of like field stretcher, borderline starter, but not important pieces of their offenses. That's kind of what that says to me.
The two that I'm willing to say might not be accurately represented just in the week 1 sample that we have here is I think that Elijah Moore that we touched on earlier and Brandon Cook both look like guys where given the game script that they were in, neither team really needed to pass a ton, and I think Elijah Moore is kind of like the Zay Flowers role of the Browns. I think he definitely could fill that niche. He might not do it in the way that we saw Zay do it in week 1, where he's just going to get so much. But I think that maybe he's a Zay Flowers light. And then I think Brandon Cooks, just in the little bit that we saw where he got targets for the Cowboys, he did have. I'm not sure if you watched the whole game. He had a really deep ball thrown to him where he drew a pass interference call. I mean, that's like Brandon Cook's special. That also is like the Michael Gallup special. Is just run straight and like pray that we get pass interference.
I don't think Brandon Cooks is in the cardio club section of this, and I agree with you. Where
you're talking about cardio club guys. My apologies.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in the range where it's close enough to good, where and it's the small sample size where you could still that be quite an excellent season for him.
Yeah, but going back to your cardio club guys that you were dogging, I agree with you. None of these are ones where I'm super excited and where I see them earning a lot more. I think these are all they're kind of dusted.
Yeah, I shit on MVS in the season. I sort of took stabs at Quez or IP. I wrote an article and took stabs on Chase Claypool or IP. Not very many people taking Josh Palmer. So he was kind of already RIP. And so if it's okay with you, just because we're into 2 hours.
We're past the 2 hour mark. Yeah. This chart has some really interesting guys. You want to talk about guys that are going to earn their way to more routes. I mean, Rashid Shaheed, Jordan Addison, and I think the Romeo Dubs is bearing the lead for Jaden Reed, in my opinion. I think that I like a lot of these guys that are in this quadrant. Even Calvin Austin. I mean, I got a lot of Calvin Austin from best ball drafts, but the Deontay Johnson injury opens the door for Calvin Austin way earlier than I anticipated it would be open. Yeah. And when you consider the fact that now before I was thinking the path to Calvin Austin playing was he's going to need to beat out Allen Robinson. And it's not hard to beat him out, but you know what makes it way easier when Deontay Johnson is back and healthy for Calvin Austin to usurp Allen Robinson for that third wide receiver role is
game
to see them both on the field at the same time. Getting to see Allen Robinson just trot his ass out there and watch Calvin Austin actually display some legit burner speed and maybe deliver a couple splash plays. Like, I think he's going to be hard to keep off the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with Jaden Reed, Dobbs, and I don't think they're true like backup guys. I I think that probably was one where they were quite a good bit ahead. That does feel quite encouraging for the Packers offense. I'm not. I think I'm absolutely saying that the JSN stuff week 1 noise. I'm more than happy to bury Sky Moore. It's actually quite interesting that his route share was so low, and his weighted targets per route run is so low. That one feels like he's that's not good.
I'm good to move on from Sky Moore. I think that the Sky Moore experiment is done.
Is he a cut in a redraft and sort of like undraftable in a resurrection?
God, I guess it depends in redraft. I really don't want to cut him just because no one on that offense has asserted themselves as like the guy. So I probably just want to have it as I want the lottery ticket for
Give him one more week.
Yeah. Oh man, you know who? I mean, I mentioned this earlier. Holy shit, Christian Kirk is going to be bad. I mean, not like it's not going to be the same week 1 every week for Christian Kirk. I should have been eating my own cooking on this because I kept saying the Calvin Ridley price is untenable because the way this offense is like it's consolidated but it's 4 guys. It's Evan Ingram, it's Calvin Ridley, it's Zay Jones, it's Christian Kirk. It's going to be those 4, and it's going to be kind of like the Niners offense in that you don't know who's going to be the whack-a-mole pop-up receiver in the given week. I didn't anticipate it being so bad for Christian Kirk though. Like I thought that Zay Jones was a good click at ADP, and I started course correcting and taking a lot more of him near the end of the summer as I let that take kind of cook in the brain oven for a little bit. But I didn't correct it. Kirk was falling at the same time, and the Calvin Ridley's team had gotten crazy. It's like, cool, I'll get both Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and one of these has to be right. Well, the cheaper one's looking more right now, and the prices on Christian Kirk are looking bad. So that's what I'm kind of scared of.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely scary performance. Did we talk about Bateman? Just in connection with oh yeah, there he is.
Bateman. Yeah, we mentioned him briefly on the last chart where he wasn't there, but yeah, I think that Bateman is. You talked about guys that are going to earn their way into more targets. I think that he's one of those guys. He only had he was in the 30s for snaps, right? 30% snaps or something like that, and he ended up with 3 targets. So. And I think Bateman is good. I believe that Bateman is a good NFL receiver. He hasn't been healthy very much, so it's hard to know. But we've got very limited sample where we've seen him deliver explosive plays, and he's not able to participate a ton in the offseason program. So the story I'm telling myself is that this is just him getting worked into it's a brand new offensive system. You're not going to throw this guy out here for 100% of snaps week 1. And I think what we see is Odell Beckham's snaps decrease and Bateman's increase. And because we saw Beckham not earn many targets, because Bateman is going to be more of a target earner than Beckham. I think we see that start to come out of that Zay Flowers share just a little bit. This is fine.
I think this is an okay to like. It's not the target per route run that you're looking for, but it's fine. And then if you look at stuff like he did have 2 yards per route run, which is pretty good, is like you said, he got 3 targets on like a smallish route share. Definitely feels like something where maybe the injury is something where they're bringing him back into the offense. But it sort of encourage, especially at the price you were getting, sort of encouraging in terms of like him returning to injury and returning to the player that you were getting before.
Yeah. Hey, I had one more that I have a question for you on.
Okay.
What are we doing with Braxton Berrios? Because he was more involved than I anticipated him being involved. I thought he'd be involved. I did draft a tiny bit of Braxton Berrios, but what are we doing there?
I don't think I'm ever starting him in redraft. My team is cooked if I'm starting him. I think the news is that he's consolidated the third wide receiver role better than anybody did last year, which is quite good. I think that you still have this problem if you're trying to get your third wide receiver, where the Dolphins' third wide receiver, where Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are just going to command so many targets that it does make it hard for Braxton Berrios. Maybe Berrios is like a contingent play, like a really like limited contingent play. I think that I'm probably interested. He's probably one of those kind of late round guys where now that I know who the third receiver is, when I have Tua, I'm happy to click him late. I think that he's probably like, if he's like the minimum price for DraftKings, I'm happy to put him in a Tua stack. But not I'm not buying that he's going to be like a top 30 wide receiver or anything like it.
Yeah, and I agree with that assessment. If you told me that I was allowed to play Braxton Berrios plus River Craycraft in one slot and get the points for them, then I'm really interested. But
right,
yeah, I think between the two of them, they're not going to consolidate enough of a role in either one to be super interested. But I thought it was worth talking about because that third wide receiver spot had been murky, and that is an offense that is exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, Berrios, he got 29 routes. River Craycraft, or what is his name?
River
Craycraft, that's how you say it, was 16. So yeah, I honestly, I thought when I'd seen him in the kind of like 60 to 60, I thought, if I'm reading this right, Berrios in the 60 to 65% route share. I'm like, that seems somewhat consolidated and feels more consolidated than it was last year.
Definitely.
But you're right. It's still not high enough where like it's not, you're not talking about Tyler Boyd third wide receiver consolidation.
And the two receivers ahead of him are such strong target earners that you need it to be Braxton Berrios plus River Craycraft form Voltron to be the Dolphins wide receiver 3.
So let's say zero ownership. The slate sets up for you have max you have high salary guys that you want to fit in. You really like, and you got your Tua stack. I assume is that something where even with low ownership that you're interested in Berrios?
I'd much rather play it through Durham Smythe, right? I mean, assuming that his price is reasonable. But like I wouldn't X him out if I wanted to have a lot of Tua stacks. You know, I'd sprinkle.
Makes sense.
Just
I think that makes sense. Where like it's still not consolidated enough, even at low prices where you're running to play it. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, very very. I know we briefly touched on Jordan Addison, and we don't need to spend a ton of time on him because we're coming up on 2.5 hours. But Jordan Addison's gonna smash, guys. If you can still acquire Jordan Addison in a redraft league, go and get him. That offense is going to pass the ball so freaking much. I mean, they threw 75% of their plays are pass plays, and we just talked about how bad Alexander Mattison is, like, and their defense is atrocious. like Baker Mayfield went out and beat him, you know. And I do like Baker, but yeah, Jordan Addison's going to be insane. He's good.
Definitely agree. Pretty bullish for Addison there. So I think for our all one of our listeners who's left, I appreciate you taking the ride with us. I think we finish it there, right?
Yeah, I think it's time to land the plane. So thanks everybody. It was a very fun inaugural stat chasing episode for me, and looking forward to seeing you guys next week on Tuesday with some more charts.
Really enjoyed doing the show. Wow, we have two. I underplayed it.
Double the amount of listeners we thought.
Oh, let's go! We got 3.
Triple.
Appreciate appreciate you guys staying on with us. And really enjoyed doing the show. Really looking forward to seeing next week. Double the sample size, and we'll see you next week.